afternoon, Googlers. Welcome to GEGMN's Summer Saturdays Back to Basics series. This is episode number 5, and my name is Georgina Dean, the GEG leader. Really excited to welcome you guys, especially after a short break. We had our Eid al-Adha holiday, national holiday here this past weekend, so we did move forward this episode of Summer Saturdays to Tuesday. So first day back to work after the holiday yesterday. So we're really excited today to bring to you some Back to Basics all about Google Classroom. This will be the first part of the Google Classroom series. So today being the episode for the 4th of August, and then we'll do the second part of the series on the 8th of August. So basically what we'll do today is we will take a look at the basics for Google Classroom, and on the second episode, so the second part, we will take a deeper look into the different kinds of things that we can do with Google Classroom, which will take place on the regular Saturday, which is this upcoming Saturday on the 8th of August. So you're getting a little bit of Google Classroom covered in both of those days. All right, so let's take a look then. Here we have our deck, and I'll drop that here in the chat for anybody who would like to have it. All right, there we go. And so basically, we will cover today accessing Google Classroom, looking at the different parts of Google Classroom, what information they give us or what access to resources or tools that we can do with that. We'll take a look at how we can interact with students and teachers by adding them into the Google Classroom, and how to start a Google meeting through Google Classroom. And then next week's Google Classroom episode number 2 will cover how do we actually create learning experiences inside Google Classroom. All right, so let's get started. Google Classroom is basically the platform, the learning management platform for learning to happen synchronously or asynchronously for blended learning approaches to education. So what that means is that everything that you do for learning can actually be housed inside of a Google Classroom, and we'll open it in just a minute, so that it's a space, a blended space, where students and teachers can actually interact together. There's also the opportunity for parents to be involved with Google Classroom by receiving something called a Guardian Summary, which gives them a breakdown of everything that's happening in the Google Classroom as far as your child's work is concerned. So it allows them to support at home with how to move learning forward that way. So let's start by finding out how can we get into Google Classroom. So just like in previous episodes of the Summer Saturdays, we can access Google Classroom apps similarly to the ways we access the Google Docs or Google Slides. So by clicking on a new tab at the top in our browser, we can actually use the Google Apps menu on the top right hand side, and we can actually scroll down till we see Google Classroom. Now in this instance, we don't see Google Classroom because I don't use it very often in my GTrainer domain. However, once you're logged into your G Suite for Education account, you will be able to see the Google Classroom app show up here, and so you can click on the app directly from these options. If you don't see it, what you can do is you can click on your Gmail or your YouTube or your Drive or your contacts or anything like this. Let's just use Calendar for an example. And then from inside one of the apps, now you'll see that when I open the apps menu, Google Classroom is listed at the top left. So you can access Classroom once you're directly inside one of the other G Suite for Education apps. So now I'm going to click on Classroom, and it's going to open the Google Classroom application for me. That is how you can access Google Classroom. I'll just make that a little bit smaller so you guys can see. Perfect. Okay, so I have 3 Google Classrooms set up here in my training domain, so we'll just take a look at different things that we can do with those. So back to our agenda for today, we've covered how to access Google Classroom, and now let's see how can we create a class. And for those of you who are joining along in today's agenda, please note that you can actually click on these links that are embedded, and they have the resources from Google support, in this instance specific to classroom help support, to give you the step-by-step instructions. So you can literally click on that document and it will open you the step-by-step instructions to create a class using your computer, an Android device, or an Apple iPhone and or iPad. So Google is always there. One of the best things, as you all know, that I love about G Suite for Education is that they're always readily available with resources to support us with anything we need to do in our journey with G Suite for Education. So super great resource. You can navigate by clicking on the right hand side to see different topics, and everything is organized for you. So highly recommend to take a look at these links posted here in today's Google slide agenda so that you can refer back to it if you didn't remember everything from the video. Okay, so let's create a class. So up here on the top right hand side, you'll see here that there's a plus button. So I'm just going to go ahead and make that a little bit bigger. And if I hover my mouse over it, it says here, create or join a class. So I'm going to click on the plus button. Now I can join a class or I can create a class. So there are some schools, districts, emirates around the world who actually have teachers create their own Google Classrooms. And there are some schools around the world where the G Suite administrator actually already sets up Google Classrooms for teachers. So my recommendation, first and foremost, is just check with your school and see, has the IT and or G Suite administrator set up Google Classrooms for me, or is this something I will need to do by myself for my class? So if you need to create it by yourself, then you can click on Create Class. And this is where you would fill in information about your class. So you would give your class a name. So let's say, for example, you're teaching English. So perhaps it will be grade 6 English, or maybe it's year 6, or depending on how your school is set up, this could actually have many different options. But either way, let's just choose something in high school. So we'll say year 10 maths. Okay, so year 10 maths. And the section could be, again, if you have like multiple year 10 classes. So for example, it could be section C, or your school could have names. So whatever the section is, you would write that there. The subject is mathematics, and then your room, if you have room numbers in your school, you could put it there. So maybe it's M10, for example. And then you would click create on the bottom right. When you click create, G Suite is actually now creating this Google Classroom for you. So it says creating on the bottom right, and it will just take a minute. And while that's creating, just a reminder that everybody is welcome to write any questions you have in the YouTube chat on the right hand side. I'm watching it as we go, so I'm happy to answer any questions if you need support with anything. Okay. So inside of our Google Classroom, this is what it looks like. I'm just making it a little bit smaller so that you can see it more easily. Perfect. Okay, so now what we have here is a banner at the top of the Google Classroom. So at the top of the Google Classroom, we can see here there is a banner, year 10 maths, and all of the details that I've written in this section is actually listed here. Section C and year 10 maths. If I would like to actually be able to check and see, I just noticed that I'm frozen in the live stream. Let's see. Oh, there we go. Perfect. Okay. Just wanted to check to make sure people were hearing what I was saying. Okay. So here is the classroom banner at the top left with the information that we've actually inputted before we clicked create. To see the information in order to set class information, so if we go back to our agenda here, there's information in E and F to see class information and set permissions. So this setting wheel at the top right hand side is what you would click on in order to see the settings of your Google Classroom. So right away, as soon as I click the settings wheel, this first class details section is what I've already entered at the beginning of create a class. If I scroll down a little bit, I can now see here that I have a class code. This class code is what you would give to your students in order for them to join Google Classroom. So they would take that code, and instead of clicking create a class, as a student, they would click join a class and they would enter this code that you see here on the right to enter your classroom. Again, that is only if you as an educator are setting up your own Google Classroom, but I know more and more schools are starting to have those presets, so you may not need the code. If you're in a situation like that, you can either choose to display it, disable it, reset it, and copy it, for example, if you want to post it somewhere for your students to have access to. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to click disable, and now it won't show in my classroom banner. I can also show here the permissions that I would like my students to have access to. If I click on this drop down arrow to the right, we will see here that students can either post on the stream, which we'll show you how to do in a minute, and comment, or only comment, or they can only see and click on things that the teacher has placed in Google Classroom. So it's a really nice way to be able to manage the environment that you would like to set up. Often is a really good practice to help you get set up is to start where just the students can comment on posts that you created until you have built a culture and classroom environment of responsibility and good digital citizenship where your students know what is a good practice and you've set up those guidelines to help them use Google Classroom effectively and productively for your online and blended learning approaches. So you can just choose, for example, to change that, and now it says students can comment only, for example, and when you click save, the changes that you've made in this section will take effect. You can also do things like how do you want things to appear on the stream, which we'll cover next week. You can show items that have been deleted or not by clicking the toggle button on or off. And you can also set Guardian summaries on or off as well. If you choose to turn that on, then this is the message that will pop up, and it will tell you that all the classes that you teach inside your Google Classroom, that will be turned on for. So you can accept or decline. So I'll just say no for now. While we're here on the topic for the agenda today, the last item is start a Google meeting. So since we're in this window, I wanted to let you guys know how to do that. Here is the section called Meet. And if you click on Generate Meet Link, Google Classroom will generate a unique meeting code link for you. This is the unique meeting code. And if you want it to be visible to students, you would leave this button toggled to the right. It's pink in this case because that's the theme. It may be blue. If you don't want this code to be visible to your students, you can turn it off by toggling the button off. And we'll see what that looks like in a second. The next section is for grading, and again, we'll cover that next week when we go into more depth for Google Classroom Part 2. So let's go ahead and save the changes that we've made to our class settings by clicking Save at the top right. And now what's happening is the Google Classroom settings have been saved, as is showing behind the video picture of myself. So now what's happening is this Google Meet link that you see here just above my video feed inside the header is actually visible off. There's a line through the view button. So you can easily turn that on or off through the class settings. And in order to start the meeting, you would literally click on that link and it would take you to start the video meeting. You would click Join Now to join the Google Meet. And if you are a class teacher, you are only the first one in the room to be able to join the Google Meet. So other students who are in this class will not be able to join this link, that link specifically, which is a unique Google Meet link code, until the teacher is present inside the room. So really, really good for safeguarding and security. Good afternoon and welcome to Abdul, who's joining us from Nigeria and the leader of GEG DITSA. Welcome. It's super nice to see you today, Abdul. I'll go ahead and I'll post the link today for the agenda, and you can actually make a copy of that, Abdul, as well. All right, so back to Google Classrooms. So this is how you would access the Google Meet link code. So what we've done so far is we've created a Google Classroom. We've taken a look at some of the settings that you can set inside the settings window to help your students use Google Classroom. And now let's just take a brief look at the different sections of Google Classroom. Right now, there are 4 tabs at the top. There is Stream, there is Classwork, there is a People tab, and there is a Grades tab. And so now what we see is inside the stream, if I scroll down a bit, you will see here that this is where your students will be able to communicate with you. So by simply clicking on the box where it says share, I'll just click cancel, where it says share something with your class. Google is awesome, and it's almost inviting you to share something. So you can click on that link and you could say, good afternoon, welcome to the Year 10 Maths class. Please introduce yourself and your favorite maths activity. And then you can say, for example, Mrs. Dean. And it's really cool because here there's always an add button when you post things. So you can click add, and you can actually add images from your Google Drive or links. So if you have a link to an activity from the internet, then you could paste the link in, or grab a file from your computer, or even add a YouTube link. So everything is really intuitive and easy to embed. So then what you can do on the right hand side, you can choose to post that immediately so that if your students are logged into the classroom, they will be able to see it. Or you can choose to schedule it for a later time, or you can choose to save draft. So this is a really great example. Let's say that I've got a really awesome welcome video that I would like to share with them, but I can't remember where it is. So you could click save draft. And now this is saved here under saved announcements. So if I click that drop down menu, I can continue working on it later and post it when I've added everything that I need to do. So for now, I'm just going to click post so that I can show you what we can do with that post. All right, so this is the stream. This is basically, maybe if to have a reference, it's like the equivalent of a Facebook page where you're posting and sharing images and text and all kinds of great things to interact with your family and friends. Just to confirm though, this is not Facebook and has nothing to do with it. This is just a comparison of a stream and what it's used for, to communicate with all of the people that are part of your Google Classroom. So let's take a look here at the classwork tab. We're not going to go in great detail today with that because the classwork tab is what we'll look into for part 2 next week on Saturday. However, by clicking on the create button, this is where you would create all kinds of different fun, enriched, blending learning activities to share with your students and interact with them during their learning. You also have access to the Google Calendar for that classroom, so it's a really nice way if you'd like to set up appointments with your students during hybrid learning or completely online learning, then you can do it that way. And you and your students have access to a Google Drive folder that contains everything from this Google Classroom. The People tab is the third tab at the top, and this is where we would add teachers and students. So by clicking on the plus button here where it says invite teachers, you can actually then type in the email address of the teacher that you would like to invite. So for example, Mrs. or Miss, I'm trying to find, you basically, I don't want to invite a real person. So basically you can just go ahead and you can type in the address of the educator that you would like to add. So for example, if you're in a maths department, since this is a year 10 maths class, that's a really good example. I always like to invite everybody that's in my team or department or faculty so that they can share. It also really helps us with planning. So if you're a group of, let's say, 6 maths teachers, if you're in all of the year 10 maths classes, then somebody could perhaps plan something for one lesson and post that across all of the year 10 maths Google Classrooms. The same for primary or elementary classes. If you're 3-form or 5-form entry, you can use the same thing, and it will really help with time saving across the board at school. So you can add co-teachers there, and also leaders can be part of that as well. So if you have your line manager, deputy head, principal, whatever the leadership member is called in your part of the world, they can also be added, and it's a really nice transparent way for leaders to be able to celebrate the amazing things that are happening inside Google Classroom. So definitely a good point to keep in mind. Students section is basically where you would invite your students. So again, remember, if your school has your IT manager and or G Suite administrator setting up your Google Classrooms for you, then they will automatically add all of the students into your Google Classroom for you. Okay, so you will not need to add them. However, if your school is not using that and you have to create your own Google Classroom, then I would recommend sharing the join code. Remember up here in the settings wheel, we showed you there was a class code. I would recommend taking the class code, so you can click enable, and I would take that class code and I would give that to my students so that they could join by themselves. If you have really young students in elementary or primary school, then you could also add them this way, but then you would need to support them in clicking accept to join the class, of course. So let me just click out of class settings and go here to the plus button, and it's the same way. You would add the student's user email address and you would click invite. When you click invite, they would become their email user would be listed here, and it would be gray. So unlike my name under the teachers tab, which is black because I am an active teacher in this classroom, when you invite new people, they are not automatically added. A teacher and a student need to accept the Google Classroom invite by clicking on join or accept when they log into their Google Classroom. So again, this is just for back to basics. Obviously, we could have and we have before, I think in the past, had longer sessions for Google Classroom showing you the student view as well. But this is just a brief overview of what you can do with Google Classroom. So that's how you would add a teacher, and this is how you would add a student. All right, let's take a look because our time is almost done for today. So we've covered accessing the Google Classroom, creating one. We've taken a look at how to post to a stream, including announcements. We've seen the class information and set permissions. And we've just taken a look at adding a teacher and inviting a student to the class. We also briefly took a look at how you would start a Google meeting directly from inside your Google Classroom. So what's going to happen next is down here on Google Classroom as a student, there is a link here for join Google Classroom as a student, and it basically allows you to be able to read and see what the experience is like joining if you are a student. So that is a helpful resource to give to your students of your class. And that's it for today. So we will keep this Google Classroom open, and we will continue training from this next week on Saturday. I guess that's just in 4 days actually, the end of this week for Google Classroom number 2. The last thing before I let you guys go is there is a grades tab over here on the right that the teacher does see, because you can actually use grades, import, create grades from the assignments, and we'll discuss that briefly next week. But the students, they won't actually see this grades column unless you are using that for your lessons as a teacher. So if you have chosen to use grades, then the student would see them once the grades have been given back to them. If you're at a school where grades is not the focus, for example, maybe you're not using that. I see that quite a lot as well. More of the focus on progress rather than numbers. Then it's quite possible that you don't ever use grades, but it is there if you would like to have that option with your students. So we've taken a look. The last little tip from me is there's a little question button on the bottom left of this page. I'm actually going to move my window over so that you guys can see that. So here there's a little question mark on the bottom left. When you click on the question mark, it's going to pull up what's new. This is really awesome. What's new was not always there before in Google Classroom, but if you click what's new, it's going to take you to all of the updates that are happening in Google Classroom. So as you can see here, the last update for Google Classroom happened in April 2020. So that's good, and the information I'm giving you today is obviously very up to date. However, it's a great way for you to be able to keep up to date with new things that are happening in Google Classroom. You can also report an issue if you're experiencing any technical difficulties. You can request a feature update, which is really awesome. If you have a really creative idea that would help your teachers and students, then you could request that feature from Google. And just to be clear, obviously G Suite don't always respond immediately, and obviously there is, a way they look at trends and different things like that to see which of the feature updates they're going to update and when are they going to release those. But the more teachers feedback and let Google know what they would like to have and use, then the more they're going to take that into consideration to update our features for us. You also have access to the Help Center, which is where I've linked in most of the information today. And you also have access to the Help community where you can ask questions from experts. Okay, so that takes care of Google Classroom Session 1. And I will just leave you here. Normally we have an office hour, as you all know, the evening after to discuss anything. If you have questions or you'd like to celebrate some of the risk-taking you've done with your new tool. But since this is in the middle of the week, we will join the office hour together and we will meet next Sunday at 6:30 p.m. And you can click on this link here to access that next Sunday. So we'd like to thank you for joining us today on your Saturday. Well, no, today's Tuesday. So in the middle of the week, in your afternoon, on a holiday. So I know everybody's resting and thinking about getting back to school in a few weeks. And so we appreciate you taking the time to come and get your Googly on with us at GEGMN. If you have any friends or colleagues who you think would benefit from being part of a Google educator group like GEGMN, then you're welcome to invite people to join, and I'll drop that link in the chat now. And please feel free to share that with your colleagues or any other teachers around the world who you think might benefit from being part of this awesome community. I'll take the chance also to let everybody know that we do have something really special coming up from Google for Education next week. It is a 24-hour Anywhere School event being put on by Google for Education, and all of the GEGs around the world, including GEGMN, will be participating with a watch party. And so just keep your eyes open in our threads for that. We have Facebook and Twitter and Instagram, and of course this YouTube channel, so you're welcome to reach us on any of those platforms, and when you fill in the registration form you'll have access to join. So thank you once again for joining us at GEGMN. Please stay safe, enjoy your summer holiday, and we look forward to seeing you on Saturday at the same time. Have a great day. Take care.